Is there any image more rugby than this? Rachel Burford, Harlequins captain, club legend, Rugby World Cup winner, 84 cap international, injured early in the game, roaring back onto the pitch to celebrate her side's iconic victory, herself and Laura Brooks then creating a moment that pushes George North's backpacking of twat-face McGayfart for rugby's greatest piggyback. Harlequins head into today as underdogs against a Saracens wolf pack that not only does not lose, but unlike their male counterparts, does not make accounting errors either. They were facing a team packed with some of the best players on the planet, including one particular lady who pushes pretty hard for that number 1 slot. Saracens had not only won every Premier 15's title to date, but they'd lost just 3 games since 2018. This was not just an upset, it was one that took possibly the best performance Harlequins have put in since they started the women's programme right the way back in 1995. So, how did Quins defeat the triple champions and create a new chapter in Premier 15's history? It's not a coincidence that the two teams contesting the 2021 final were the two teams with the league's strongest kicking games. The Premier 15s is one of the most open and expansive major leagues in World Rugby, something only helped by the new COVID law variations this season, so kicking has become a real point of difference between the best teams and the rest. The semi-final showed just how important the boot nudge game is in this league. Wasps have been excellent with the ball in hand all season, but Leanne Riley's ability to just slide a kick down into the corner meant Wasps only had the ball where they didn't want it, and the likes of Abby Dow not seeing any real chance of attack until deep into the second half. And then that theme went double in the other semi-final as Helena Rowlands and Emily Scarrett, who I'm contractually obligated to mention at least once in every video on women's rugby, were able to even up the contest through matching the kicking game despite Saracens looking on top in most areas. However, the thing that sets Saris apart is what they do when given that territory. Simply put, right, I don't think I've seen them fail to score from this kind of position all season. I genuinely don't. Or to put it even simpler, they have 2 cleals, which, let's be honest, is bullshit. Like, giving out 1 cleal to play against Durham Sharks is like dropping an armoured tank into a caveman fistfight. Giving them 2 is like sending all of the Avengers in to fight a peacock. Side note, by the way, the Premier 15s is a 10-team competition and yet has 2 teams who are known as the Sharks. That's double the number of sharks that we saw surrounding the beach in Jaws. And yet, if it came down to it, I'd still back Marley Packer to beat both of them in a fight. So, Harlequins knew the usual emphasis on kicking went double. 1 good kick from Harrison or McKenna and they'd be facing down the unbearable, unstoppable pack Alex Osberry has assembled. However, they also noticed there's a name missing from that last sentence, and it's scrum half Emma Swords, a very old school conduit type scrum half who's very good, but her first instinct is almost never to kick. However, the fact Saracens rarely kick off 9 is hardly an issue considering how pinpoint a boot Zoe Harrison has, and it's one that's kept Saracens playing pretty much in the opposition coach's front room, never mind the 22 all season. But let's have a look at how Zoe Harrison kicks, because her accuracy comes at a slight cost. Harrison kicks across her body, swinging her full weight onto the ball. This is great for both accuracy and distance, but it means A, the ball takes longer to get to your boot, giving the defence longer to get up in your face, and B, your body language is completely open, giving any would-be charge down types a chance to get directly in the way of your boot before it hits the ball. Harlequins clearly identified that pre-match, and watch where Rachel Burford here targets to charge this down. She's not running at Harrison, as you normally would if trying to put pressure on, but this space here, knowing she'll take a step and then swing round as she prepares the kick. Whilst Harrison makes a superb cover tackle, this charge down leads to the penalty that eventually gives Harlequins the first points of the match, and it kind of sets a tone. From more open play, Quins were even more systematic in how they targeted Harrison's right boot. Phase after phase, if they saw Saris were setting to kick, they called on Cocaine. Despite being a hooker at the top tier, Cocaine often, and this is extraordinary, plays fly half for the RAF and hence knows how to defend this channel, meaning she could put extra pressure on Harrison, whilst their number 10, Emily Scott, is a utility back by trade and so can easily slot into either the backfield or the centre channels, having played plenty in midfield and fullback at all levels. This is Harrison's first in-play kick of the game, and Cocaine wraps around the corner to pelt herself at Harrison's outside. Again, this space anticipating how she'll kick. She gets a touch on the ball, Quins regather and win a penalty here. This was just the start of a pretty torrid day at the Saracens breakdown, as they conceded penalty after penalty after penalty for the same sort of offences time after time after time. Now normally, you look at a situation like this as the fault of the forwards failing to recover the ball, but check the personnel entering most of the rucks Saracens lost. It's almost unanimously backs. That's because these penalties are not about discipline or even poor technique. They're about over-ambition. One of the biggest shifts in rugby the last 4 years has been the ability of all backs at the breakdown. Most modern structures are built on the idea, if it came to it, that even a puny winger could secure the ball from an opposition threat, such as the standard of technique and power in all players these days. Saracens' women's team have adopted most of the cutting-edge tactics and techniques and shapes and systems from the highest echelons of the game, and most of the season, this has worked for them. Partly because their attacking shape is breaking down oppositions easily enough, and in part because they tend to play fast enough that the quality of the clear out isn't overly important. And most of these shapes are built on the assumption that a winger, a fly half, literally anyone on the team could clear out any given ruck. Now, I don't want to be too crude here, I realise this is quite a sensitive thing, but a team shape that assumes your lock will be as effective at a clear out as your winger is one designed to be used by full-time professionals. If you're a semi-pro winger, your training time will correctly go on the most important skills for your position. Handling, high ball, speed, finishing, kicking. Rucking is only an extra. So, at times in the semi-final, Saracens did look caught out trying to play quick phases with support players being plucked out of convenience of ability, as is the modern vogue in Test rugby, but Loughborough were only able to cause moments of chaos instead of a prolonged 70-minute nightmare. Quins would ensure that would be the case. Not only the likes of Cowell here extremely competent at the breakdown, the speed and work rate of a player like Shauna Brown allows them to place her prominent in a kick chase, giving her the opportunity to clamp onto the ball. But the kick chase was weirdly not as important as it normally would be for Quins, thanks to the way in which they put boot to ball. Whereas Sword is not much of a kicker, her ability to find the corner is Leanne Riley, the Quins scrum half's real point of difference, and it was something that put Wasps to the Emma a week earlier. Quins kicked with such a low trajectory, looking for the sidelines. They also dropped Riley into the backfield in order to counter kicks as well. Sometimes they were able to force mistakes, but often it was just about catching Saracens off guard. Saracens generally kicked when they started to run out of ideas or when the defence was numbered up, when they didn't see an attacking opportunity. Harlequins kicked whilst going forward, whilst momentum was still with them, meaning it never felt like they were just surrendering the ball, they were just applying pressure by a different means. And sure enough, that pressure led to 2 tries for the Harlequins hooker and a refreshing lack of white line jokes on Twitter. The technique on the first score is superb. Vicky Cornborough using herself as a wedge to open the door, blocking off any Saracen shove so power can flow through from behind. The pack timing their turn perfectly to open Cocaine's route to the line. And the second begins as a bold call, a very kickable penalty, but with the momentum on the field and knowledge of how good Saracens will be once they get hold of the ball, once they get into their 22, Quins looked to capitalise. There was no panic to how they approached the game. Their visits to 22 were about accumulating points, rather than the psychological win of cracking an opposition defence. Saracens hold them out once, Quins using their locks in the Cornborough roll, still attempting to roll the Saracens back out of the way and open up the line, but Saracens do really well. They target their own power at the fringes, preventing the Quins pack splintering them open. So, second bite of the Dave Cherry, Quins counterpunch. Saracens defend as per the previous maul. They defend what Quins have done the last 2 times, putting weight on the sides. Harlequins instead send all of it through the middle. Saracens have to hold and drive, meaning when Cocaine does break off, shielded by fellow forwards, only Cleela's there to try and stop her. And, she can't. And that accumulating was the right call, because whenever Saracens got within range, they seemed to strike. Marley Packer was phenomenal, brilliant, really, really good all day, proving sometimes the phrase super scary mother doesn't need any F-bombs after it, and her try could have turned the game. Saracens' reputation around the fringes is so strong, Quins condense all their resources on it, and this creates a huge overlap here, but they do well to trap the ball and slow it down. However, there's no way they can spread the line properly, and Saracens give themselves options. McKenna, an excellent distributor, waits behind with Poppy clearly in front, both asking very different things of the same 2 defenders. Cowell here can't afford to drift, and Fletcher can't afford to let the tackle on Cleo be 1-on-1, otherwise it's a try. Everyone's so focused on the two threats, nobody notices Packer work round late and take a lovely soft pass to wallop her way over the line. Packer's second try also comes from the sheer attention of having a Poppy Cleal in your team. With all eyes and shoulders going on stopping her reaching the line, half the pack working super hard to help out in the tackle, nobody can set as the guard fast enough to stop Packer dotting it down and scoring a try seconds later. Whilst this rally by Saracens was interrupted by a brilliant strike here by Lagi Tuima, their all-round game reappeared in the third try as they tried to use their numbers, Fleetwood cutting back in and almost powering over the line herself before a similar situation unfolds the second try. The forwards wrapping across are so focused on stopping the flanker out wide, just two backs are left on the blind side here to guard the line, and Sophie, the goodie, can barrel her way over. But none of this was to be, because Harlequins saw it the final 50 minutes superbly. It almost felt like they put some Beauty and the Beast shit and managed to befriend the clock. Each key intervention coming at the perfect moment until they were eventually able to pass a huge amount of time in the final stages without conceding the turnover that might have given Saracens the chance to take the title. It was a finish that managed to be somewhat comfortable for the players on the pitch, was hectic for those of us at home, be it our own or King's home. Sorry. But the final whistle wasn't where the match's moments stopped, because Burford's crutch-conquering adrenaline rush was outdone by a teammate moments later, who stepped up to the microphone and gave us perhaps the iconic image that will outlive this game. In a brilliant, moving post-match interview, Shauna Brown said this match was proof women's rugby and women's sport is good enough. That they could put on an international standard of rugby in front of fans. But to anyone who'd watched that final, or either the semis the week before, or indeed almost anything from this season's Premier 15s, that didn't even need saying. The only thing that has to happen to convince anyone of the quality of the Premier 15s is to put it in front of people. Women's rugby doesn't need to compare itself to men's rugby to justify itself, but because someone in the comment section will do this anyway, the intensity on display at King's Home on Sunday was at least as high as last season's Premiership final at Twickenham, and the game was infinitely more entertaining and watchable and fun. Plus, both teams actually remembered to jump at any season-defining lineouts 5 metres out, so they've got that going for them. Shauna Brown said it better than any of us could live on BT Sport, but she didn't say it when the microphone was in front of her face. She said it in the 70 minutes earlier, where she was dynamic, tenacious, powerful, everything and anything a top-class rugby player could ever aim to be. Shauna Brown told anyone who could ever doubt it that women's rugby is more than good enough on Sunday, but she'd already made the point long before she even had to open her mouth. And I am going to put the clip of Shauna Brown saying that in her own words immediately after this, because I recognise what I've just done is, as a white guy, just editorialise that, and I don't want that to be what happens. And if you haven't seen the full interview, please go and look it up. Please go and find it it's on YouTube. It was shared around on Twitter and so on. I retweeted it. There's loads of places you can find it beyond the clip I'm going to put afterwards. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There's loads more around the channel if you want to have a look around from all genders and all places within rugby. I'm next going to be moving on to the Lions deep dive, looking at how they might play. Hopefully they'll be up next week. I've also been doing a podcast on the 2011 Rugby World Cup, going through it game by game. We are now finally getting on to the final. We've got an episode on the bronze final featuring Josh Gardner from the Blood Run podcast is going up today. There's next week we're going to move on to the Rugby World Cup final itself. We've got episodes on the infamous Bryce Lawrence scandal, the Sam Warburton red card, on Georgia versus Romania. Every game from the World Cup we covered in detail. We had Blaine Scully, we had Connor Traynor, who at the time was a student who came in and scored 2 tries against the All Blacks. There's loads and loads of stuff if you want to have a look at that, as well as loads more around the channel. And I'll see you very soon for more rugby. Until then, here's Shauna.
Like, this is not just about rugby, this is not just about the sport, it's about women and it's about women's sport, and it's about putting us on a platform and knowing that we can do it, and we've come out and put an international standard of rugby in front of fans, and this is what rugby should be week in, week out, men or women's. Like, we're here, and I challenge anyone to say that women's rugby is not good enough and women are not good enough, because we are.
You absolutely are. You've done the sport crowd today, Shauna. You looked really relaxed pre-match, coming off the bus with your earphones singing, and you leave here as champions, and you leave here as Allianz Premier 50s Player of the Match. Shauna, well done. Huge congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.